Alright, what's up again there guys? Brian here, the 3 Topics Gamer, here to share with you another one of my requested top 10 list videos to share with you guys today. For this particular video, I'll be sharing what are my top 10 favorite video game remakes of all time. Now, this video was requested by one of my longest viewers, going by that name, so I just want to make sure to give you a shout out and thank you for your idea. And for those of you that know me, I haven't really been a big fan of remakes as in recently, because I think that just a lot of my all-time favorite video games have been remade and just unnecessarily being remade. However, there have been a number of remakes over the years that I do think are actually worth replaying, and in some very rare cases actually do surpass the original versions. So these are just 10 of those very, very rare cases in remakes that I've experienced in my life. So if you do happen to enjoy this video by the end, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Keep tracking me on my future videos. And remember, if you guys have any ideas for future top 10 list videos or tier list videos or discussion videos, make sure you share those ideas in the comments down below, and I will try to get them up as soon as I can, as well as to give you a pretty solid shout out. So starting off with my list of my 10th favorite video game remake of all time is going to surprise a lot of people, because as I'm sure you guys have known me, for actually those who've been watching me for a while, I'm a big PlayStation person. So to give anything on the Microsoft any credit is extremely rare. I'm sorry, some crazy idiot with a motorcycle just went by. Apologies. But going back into the list, number 10 on my list is going to have to go to Halo. I think it's called Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, that came out in 2011. As much of a PlayStation person as I am, I have to admit, I did get a chance to play the original Halo when it came out on the very first Xbox. I think my cousin brought it over, and I had a lot of fun playing that, and I actually had a lot of fun playing that in high school on the PC. Played a lot of multiplayer maps. So when they kind of re-released it, I didn't have an Xbox at the time, but I would eventually get an Xbox for like 6 months, so I did get a chance to replay it again, and heck, I had fun playing it again. To be fair, I don't recall them doing too much to change it, except it being better looking, I guess, so I'm not sure what made it so different instead of it just being called a remaster, but apparently this did classify as being a remake, and I would say it's kind of the bare minimum of a remake and me having fun with it. So yeah, I would say that's the primary reason why Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary from 2011 is number 10 on my list. Taking the number 9 spot on my list is a game that actually was recommended to me by another fellow YouTuber who also loves JRPGs, probably even almost as much, if not a little bit more than I do. And she introduced me to this game 2 years ago, and I didn't even know this game had existed before, but I'm kind of upset that I didn't find out about this game sooner, and that is the remake to Live Alive. This is a updated version of a 90s game that came out during the 16-bit era. And as someone who really enjoyed that period of RPGs, I would actually kind of go back after my experience with Final Fantasy VII, and I had a lot of fun playing some of those older 16-bit RPGs in the form of games like Final Fantasy VI and, Chrono Trigger, Seekers of Mana, and I'm just so upset that I didn't discover this game sooner. But once I had a chance to replay this on the Nintendo Switch, incredible. Absolutely incredible. I think that more JRPGs that came out during that period need to get the same treatment that this game did, because this game did a fantastic idea of not only updating the overall visuals, but just I think some of the story elements were also very much improved upon. I think there's even some voices in this game, which I thought was very, very well handled. So yeah, I gotta say, Live Alive. If you have any interest on playing a pretty solid JRPG remake for the Nintendo Switch, I would absolutely recommend this. But I have heard that you can play this on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5. So heck, if you get a chance to play it on those consoles, I would suggest you do so, because it will be definitely well worth your time. Taking the number 8 spot is also another game that came out during the 16-bit era, and is also another RPG, but this one didn't come out 2 years ago. It came out last year in the form of Super Mario RPG. Now, I did happen to I do remember playing this a little bit as a kid, but not being a big fan of it, because at that point I really wasn't too big in RPGs, but I did think it was an interesting idea to kind of take the concept of Mario and his friends and allies and put them into an RPG setting. But I think it worked out even better once you got a chance to replay it on the Switch. This was absolutely an incredible updated version of a classic JRPG style in the Mario world. Had a lot of fun with it. Visuals were very much improved upon. Combat was as simple, old school JRPG as you could ask for. And that's particularly how I like to play my old school JRPG games. And it was a solid challenge. I mean, this took me quite a while. I think like 18 to 20 hours. So that's a pretty good amount of time for a JRPG, especially as simple and as basic as this one. So yeah, had a lot of fun with this. I would absolutely recommend this to anyone who's not only a fan of Mario, like I am, but a fan of old school JRPGs. So yeah, number 8 would have to go to Super Mario RPG. Taking the number 7 spot on my list is going to have to go to Resident Evil 2 Remake. Now, for those of you who don't know, I did not become a Resident Evil fan until Resident Evil 4 was released on the PlayStation 2. And I would actually play Resident Evils 4, 5, and 6 before I would actually go back and start playing some of the older Resident Evil games. And I absolutely hated those original Resident Evil games. I mean, the fixed camera angles, the horrible controls, just make those games utterly unplayable. They are some of the worst experiences in gaming I've ever had. So once I heard and they announced they would actually be remaking Resident Evil 2, I actually thought I would give it a chance. And heck, with the updated graphics, the updated controls, and some of the upgraded game mechanics, I gotta say, this was a pretty awesome game past the police station, because I absolutely hated the first third of this game, even to this point. Even knowing what to do, I thought it was frustrating. But I do think the 2 campaigns just playing as Leon and Claire were pretty good. I thought the story didn't change too much from the original. I do believe they actually took out some content. But overall, with the much updated controls and updated game mechanics and visuals, this was an incredible remake. And it actually started the process of them remaking all the older Resident Evil games, followed by 3 and unfortunately Resident Evil 4, which I still refuse to ever even consider playing. But heck, this, I would say, is my favorite out of the recent Resident Evil remakes, and heck, I don't think I need to recommend this because I think most people have played this, enjoyed it, and it's well worthy of being on a list like this, which is why it's number 7 on my list. Taking the number 6 spot on my list is a game that most of you might not even remember ever coming out, but it's actually in the form of 2016's Ratchet and Clank. Now, the weird thing about this particular game is that this is technically a remake of the original Ratchet and Clank game that came out on the PlayStation 2 in, I believe, 2002. And they also made a tie-in movie for this game that I actually saw in theaters that I'm pretty sure all of you have completely forgotten was actually made. But I thought that this was an absolutely incredible remake for a classic title. I mean, if you had a chance to play the original game when it came out, this game did a fantastic job of actually recreating some of those events while also kind of taking it in a somewhat different direction. There definitely were some story changes, but I think weapons-wise, control-wise, if you had any fun playing any Ratchet and Clank game up to this point, this is a love letter to all the other Ratchet and Clank games. And I even need to say that the follow-up game that came after this, which I won't spoil here because you should already know it, was a good follow-up. So, yeah, this was just a fantastic Ratchet and Clank remake. I really don't have too much to say about it because it was fun. It was great, and heck, had a great movie to go with it. So heck, and it even says on the back, the game based on the movie based on the game. So technically, this is the game based off of the movie, and the movie is based off the 2002 game, but different. So it's a weird sort of story. But yeah, that's why it's number 6 on my list. Okay, taking the number 5 spot on my list is a game that I technically have never actually played, but I know if I had played it and somehow can get my hands on a copy of this game, I know I would love it. And that is in the form of Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes. Now, I know that some of you guys know Metal Gear Solid is without question my all-time favorite video game franchise of all time. I mean, I think the posters over here, the 2 of them, is a good giveaway to that. But you have to remember that a lot of people don't really like Twin Snakes all that much because they think that they consider it to change too much from the original game. And I don't think it actually does that. I think that what the remake did was it actually added a lot of game mechanics that were introduced in Metal Gear Solid 2. The story didn't really change too much, but I think the presentation of the story was certainly changed. They certainly made it a little bit more Matrixy, if that's a word. Like they added all this slow motion, and they just made the cinematics a little bit more extra. And ridiculous in some cases, but it was something I really enjoyed. I equally love Twin Snakes just as much as the original Metal Gear Solid game. Now, yeah, I understand they changed some key dialogue, and some voice actors were changed, and they changed some of the music and certain things, but it still tells the Metal Gear Solid 1 story very, very well. It doesn't cancel anything, doesn't take anything out. I would even say it improves in some departments, and I think it does a great job connecting to the event of Metal Gear Solid 2 in a number of major ways. So yeah, I've never had too many negative things to say about Twin Snakes, and I accept it as an official member of the Metal Gear Solid franchise. So yeah, that's why it's taking the number 5 spot on my list. Taking the number 4 spot is a weird entry for a number of unusual reasons, but that is the game that's Shadow of the Colossus remake from, I believe, 2018. Now, don't get me wrong. Shadow of the Colossus is really one of the few masterpiece PlayStation 2 games of all time. I even went so far as picked up the remastered version that they released on PlayStation 3 that came with Eco. But apparently they remade Shadow of the Colossus from the ground up. And it plays just as well as the original. I think visual-wise, it's a pretty damn good-looking game. The reason I feel so weird about it is because despite the fact that they stated that they remade this game from the bottom up, I really can't tell what they changed from the original. I mean, controls feel kind of wavy all the time. I mean, the location of the Colossus haven't changed. Their AI still operates as weird as it did in the original, so I really don't know what they changed. I mean, when you ask for a remake, you expect them to add some improvements, some changes, some additions, but I quite literally have no idea what they added or changed or manipulated outside of the visuals from the original game. Maybe some of you guys have played this can tell me what they changed, but that doesn't change the fact that this is technically still considered a remake, and a phenomenal one despite my weird feelings about it, which is why it's number 4 on my list. Okay, on to number 3, and now we're officially entering the crack of video games franchise, at least for me. And now we have to venture into not just 2 games, but technically 4 games over the next 2 spots, which are some of the most addicting video games I've ever played in the form of the old school style Pokemon games. And taking the number 3 spot on my list is going to have to go to the technically remakes of Pokemon's Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Yeah, I picked up both. Now, apparently these are the remake updated versions of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, which I never had a chance to play the original version, so when I picked these up and saw that they were still keeping the traditional style of Pokemon combat and gameplay, I know I had to pick them up, had to pick them both up. I've made 2 different teams, I've played both different campaigns, even though they're pretty much identical. I've played them slightly differently, but yeah, Pokemon Shining Pearl and Brilliant Diamond. Pokemon, addicting, love them. So that's why they're number 3 on my list. Taking the number 2 spot are 2 more Pokemon games, but this time it's coming from my favorite period of time for Pokemon of all time in the form of the Johto region. So since you know it's Johto, it can only be 2 games in the form of Pokemon's Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which I do have, but I don't actually have the original boxes. And holy hell, I have even more Pokemon games. I got Omega Red and Alpha Sapphire. I totally forgot I had these games. But yeah, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which I looked on eBay and on GameStop. These things are, it's hard, it might be hard to see, but these things are extremely valuable. So I'm so glad that even now the Johto region is still valuable is still like praised to this day. But yeah, updated versions of the old school Pokemon Gold and Silver. I don't know why they never remade Crystal though. I really thought they would remake Crystal, but what can I say? It's Pokemon. It's the Johto region. They're updated versions of 2 classic, old school, awesome Pokemon games that I enjoyed as a kid. I mean, they're addicting. I mean, trust me, you start getting me to play one of these games and 6 hours are going to go by and it'll feel like 2. But yeah, Pokemon. Gotta catch them all, especially in the Johto region, which is why it's number 2 on my list. Taking the number 1 spot, and my all-time favorite video game remake of all time has to go to a game that came out last year, and actually I would say was probably my game of the year, in the form of the remake of the classic horror title in the form of Dead Space. Yes, the remake of Dead Space is my all-time favorite remake because not only, in my opinion, did this manage to surpass the original in a number of massive ways that even I wasn't expecting. But I would even go as far as to say that this version of Dead Space does a much better job actually connecting to the events of Dead Space 2, which I heard recently that they actually were planning to remake Dead Space 2, which I didn't want them to do, but apparently something happened, and apparently it's been shelved permanently, which I'm happy about because I don't want them to ever remake Dead Space 2 because I think it's fine just the way it is. But going back to Dead Space 1 Remake, everything was improved upon. Combat, same weapons, sound design was massively improved. The environment, they even made some major expansions to the story in directions even I wasn't expecting. So I usually think that for some remakes, it's not worth playing unless it makes you not ever want to go back and play the original. And as much as I love the original Dead Space, as it is only one of 3 games that has ever legitimately scared me, I have to say, this game has managed to do something that the prior number of remakes couldn't do. This actually makes it so I don't really have an interest in ever playing the original again, and that is incredibly rare. I think this game was almost a 10 out of 10 for me, unless it was, because this was just a phenomenal remake. I even went out and got the collector's edition that came with the helmet, which is easily one of my most prized collector's edition items I've ever had of all time. But yeah, Dead Space 1 Remake is by far my all-time favorite remake of any video game of all time. So now that you guys know my list of my all-time favorite remakes, I would like to know, what are some of your favorite video game remakes? Share your list with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.